I gave them my life savings for a business dream. Weeks later, my daughter-in-law said, "You've outlived your use." She made me sign a paper while I was sedated after surgery, saying, "It's just insurance forms." When I read what it was, I nearly passed out, but she didn't know I had already. I gave them everything, $480,000. Every penny I'd saved over 40 years of careful budgeting, coupon clipping, and working double shifts at the hospital when my feet ached so badly I could barely stand. I handed it over because Leora looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, this cafe will secure our family's future, your grandchildren's future." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. That was my first mistake. My name is Elena Harrow, and at 72 years old, I'd like to think I'm nobody's fool, but the truth is I have a weakness that nearly destroyed me. I'm stubborn to a fault, the kind of stubborn where once I've made up my mind about someone, I refuse to see the warning signs even when they're flashing red right in front of my face. I decided Leora was good for my son Caleb, decided she was family, decided she loved us, and my pride wouldn't let me reconsider even when little things didn't add up. I also have this desperate need to be needed, to feel useful, which made me the perfect target. I lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom house in Portland, the same house where I'd raised Caleb after his father died. The wallpaper was outdated, the kitchen counters were chipped formica, but it was mine. Or at least it had been. "Just sign here, Mom, it's insurance paperwork." Leora's voice was sweet, almost bored, as she slid the clipboard across the hospital tray table. The fluorescent lights above hummed and flickered, making my vision swim even more than it already was. I'd just come out of hip surgery 2 hours earlier, and everything felt distant and underwater. The anesthesia made my thoughts move like molasses. I could smell that antiseptic hospital smell mixed with something else, maybe Leora's perfume, that expensive floral scent she always wore. "My glasses," I murmured weakly, trying to lift my hand toward the side table where I thought I'd left them. My arm felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Oh, it's nothing important," Leora said quickly, and I felt her fingers wrapping around mine, getting the pen into my trembling hand. Her touch was warm but firm, almost too firm. "Just hospital forms, you know how they are, always making you sign things." I already read through it all. Across the room, I could barely make out Caleb's shape through my blurry vision. My son, my only child, was staring at his phone, the blue light reflecting off his face. He didn't even look up. Something felt wrong, but the drugs made it impossible to hold on to that thought. It slipped away like water through my fingers. I signed. The pen scratched across paper. Once, twice, 3 times. "Good, that's done," Leora said brightly, pulling the clipboard away. "Now you just rest, okay? We'll take care of everything." 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my recovery room at home, the one Caleb had set up for me downstairs since I couldn't manage stairs yet. The afternoon sun came through the window, and I'd finally gotten my reading glasses on. I was going through the stack of papers Leora had left on my nightstand, the ones she said I should keep for my records. That's when I found it. The document wasn't insurance. My hands started shaking so badly the paper rattled. It was a legal transfer of my remaining assets and house ownership to Caleb and Leora Harrow, effective immediately. The fine print, which I read 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing, declared that I had voluntarily signed while mentally competent and of sound mind. My chest tightened so sharply I thought I might actually be having a heart attack. The room spun. I'd already given them $480,000 just 3 months earlier. Leora had come to me with a business plan, glossy folders with photos of charming cafe interiors, projections and charts that looked so professional. She'd held my hand and said, "Mom, Caleb and I have been saving for years, but we're still short. This cafe could change our lives. It could be something we pass down to our children someday, your grandchildren." I didn't have grandchildren yet, but the hope of them made my heart swell. I'd transferred the money within a week. Now these papers said I owned nothing. Not the house, not my small savings account, nothing. I tried to stand up too fast, forgot about my healing hip and nearly collapsed. Pain shot through my leg like lightning. I grabbed the walker and made my way to the phone, hands still trembling. I called Caleb. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about these papers." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Can you come over?" He sighed. Actually sighed. "Mom, I'm at the cafe. We're in the middle of renovation planning. Can it wait?" "No," I said firmly, my stubborn streak kicking in. "It can't wait, this is important." Another sigh. "Fine, we'll come by after dinner." They showed up at 7:30. Leora walked in first, her heels clicking on my hardwood floors. She'd gotten her hair done recently, highlighted and styled, probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Caleb followed, looking tired, his shirt wrinkled. They sat on my couch like they owned it. I guess legally they did. "What's this about, Mom?" Caleb asked, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I held up the papers with both hands so they wouldn't shake. "This, I need to understand what I signed." Leora smiled, actually smiled. "Oh, that, it's just a transfer of assets. For tax purposes, you know. Our accountant suggested it would be better for estate planning." "I signed this while I was sedated in the hospital," I said slowly. I couldn't even see straight. "I thought it was insurance paperwork." "You signed it willingly," Leora said, her voice still sweet but with an edge now. "No one forced you. I was drugged. My voice rose despite myself. I just had surgery. Mom, calm down, Caleb said, finally looking at me. You're getting worked up over nothing. Nothing, this says you own my house now, everything I have left. Leora leaned back, crossing her legs. Elena, let's be realistic here. You're 72. You've already had one hip surgery, you'll probably need the other one done soon. What happens if you fall again? If you can't take care of yourself? This way everything's already arranged. No messy legal battles later. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. So you're saying you did this for my own good? In a way, yes, Leora said calmly. That's when I confronted them directly. I gave you nearly $500,000 for your cafe, every penny I'd saved for retirement, and now you've taken the rest. Leora stood up, smoothing her skirt. She walked over to where I sat and looked down at me. Elena, let me be honest with you, you've outlived your use. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stared at her, not quite believing what I'd heard. What did you just say? You heard me. We can't build a future dragging dead weight. You gave us the money, which was generous, truly. But we need to move forward now, and frankly, having you dependent on us, taking up resources, would only slow us down. I looked at Caleb, my son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, whose fevers I'd sat up all night monitoring, whose college I'd paid for by working 3 jobs. Caleb, he looked away, said nothing. That silence cut deeper than anything Leora had said. It was a blade sliding between my ribs, puncturing something vital. Leora leaned closer and whispered, though there was no one else to hear. And legally, Elena, everything's ours now. The house, the accounts, all of it, you signed it over. Our attorney made sure everything was airtight. They left me sitting there. I heard the front door close, heard Leora's car start in my driveway, in what was now technically their driveway. I sat in the dark for a long time, my hip throbbing, my chest feeling hollow and vast. Then I remembered something. I pulled myself up with the walker and made my way to my bedroom. I opened my laptop, the old one Caleb had set up for me years ago, showing me how to use email and browse the internet. I logged into my email and searched for a specific message. There it was, a confirmation email from 3 weeks before my surgery, from attorney Delphine Arquette. I opened it and read it again slowly, the corner of my mouth lifting just slightly. Because Leora didn't know that I'd already done something first. Before the surgery, about a month earlier, I'd been having lunch with my friend Margaret from church. She'd been talking about her sister, whose daughter-in-law had convinced her to sell her house and move in with them. They made her life miserable until she had nowhere else to go. Be careful, Elena, Margaret had said, patting my hand. I know you don't want to hear it, but sometimes family isn't what we think they are. Protect yourself. I'd bristled at the suggestion, that stubborn pride again. Leora's not like that, I'd insisted. She's family, but the seed was planted. A few days later, Leora had come by to talk about the cafe investment. She'd been so enthusiastic, talking so fast, her eyes bright with excitement. But something about the way she kept steering me away from asking questions, the way she'd already prepared all the paperwork, ready to sign immediately, it felt rehearsed, mechanical. For the first time, I let myself really look at how she acted around me versus how she acted around Caleb. With him, she was different, controlling, sharp. I'd been ignoring these little moments for years, explaining them away, but Margaret's warning had cracked something open. So I did something completely unlike me. I called an attorney. Not Caleb's attorney, not anyone they knew. I found Delphine Arquette through an internet search for elder law specialists. Her office was downtown in one of those old brick buildings with high ceilings and dark wood everywhere. She was in her mid-50s, with sharp grey eyes and silver hair cut in a precise bob. Mrs. Harrow, she'd said when I explained my situation, what you're describing are classic warning signs of financial exploitation. It may be nothing, but let's make sure you're protected just in case. Together, over 2 meetings, we created what she called a protected trust. I transferred the majority of my remaining funds, about $60,000 that I hadn't given to Caleb and Leora yet, into an irrevocable trust controlled by Delphine as trustee. The trust had a specific clause, she'd explained carefully, that would activate if my assets were transferred under suspicious circumstances, particularly involving coercion or diminished capacity. If someone tries to take advantage of you, especially when you're vulnerable, this trust protects those funds. And it gives us legal standing to challenge any transfers made under duress, Delphine had said. But I feel paranoid, I'd admitted. Like I'm betraying my family by even thinking they'd do something like this. Delphine had given me a kind but firm look. Mrs. Harrow, protecting yourself isn't betrayal, it's wisdom. And if nothing bad happens, the trust just sits there. No harm done, but if something does happen, you'll be grateful you did this. She'd also suggested I start documenting conversations. Nothing illegal, she assured me. Just keep your phone nearby during important discussions. Many phones can record with one-party consent in this state. I'd felt sick doing it, like I was turning into someone suspicious and paranoid, but I'd set up the recording app anyway. At first, I thought I'd wasted money and time on nothing. Leora and Caleb had been perfectly nice after I gave them the cafe money. But then came the surgery, and now, sitting in what was legally no longer my bedroom, listening to the recording I'd made earlier that evening, I heard Leora's voice crystal clear saying, "You've outlived your use." I played it 3 times. Each time made me angrier and colder simultaneously. My biggest flaw surfaced right then. The stubborn part of me that had made me ignore warning signs now twisted into something else. I didn't want justice, I wanted revenge. I wanted them to hurt the way they'd hurt me. Delphine had given me her cell phone number for emergencies. I called it. "Mrs. Harrow, are you all right? I need to see you tomorrow," I said. "They did it. They took everything." Her voice went professional immediately. "Come to my office at 9, bring any documentation you have, and Alina, don't confront them again, not yet," but I couldn't help myself. My impulsive side, the one that had made me hand over my life savings based on a glossy folder and my daughter-in-law's promises, now pushed me to wait. Instead of confronting them legally right away, I wanted to set them up for a bigger fall. I know now that was a mistake, that I was letting my flaws drive me towards something dark, but in that moment I wanted it so badly I could taste it. The next morning I met with Delphine. I brought the transfer papers, played her the recording, showed her the emails about the cafe investment. She listened to everything, taking notes in neat handwriting. "This is clear coercion," she said finally. "The timing alone, getting you to sign major legal documents while sedated, that's textbook exploitation. And this recording makes intent very clear. We can challenge the transfer, have it ruled invalid." "What happens then?" I asked. "The assets revert to you. We can also file for a protective order if needed and potentially pursue criminal charges for elder fraud." I should have said yes right then, should have let her file everything immediately, but that dark, vengeful part of me spoke up. "What if we wait?" Delphine looked at me carefully. "Wait for what?" "They're opening the cafe in a few weeks. Big grand opening. They've been talking about it non-stop. What if we let them think they've won, let them invest everything into this business and then pull the rug out?" Delphine set down her pen. "Mrs. Harrow, I understand you're hurt and angry, but revenge isn't the same as justice. If we wait, if you engage with them pretending everything's fine, it could complicate the case. They could argue you accepted the transfer, that you weren't coerced. But I have the recording." "Yes, and it's powerful evidence, but courts look at patterns of behavior. If you spend weeks acting like everything's fine, their attorney could argue that recording was taken out of context, that you were confused, that you actually did accept the arrangement." I heard what she was saying, but my stubborn streak wouldn't let it go. "Just a few weeks, let me do this my way first." She sighed. "Alina, as your attorney, I'm advising against this, but I can't force you to file. Just please be careful, don't do anything that could jeopardize the case." I left her office feeling electric with purpose. For the first time since that horrible conversation with Leora, I felt powerful instead of powerless. I went home and did something that probably proved how far I'd fallen into my own worst impulses. I called Leora. "Honey, I've been thinking," I said, forcing warmth into my voice that I didn't feel. "I was upset last night, but you're right. This arrangement probably is best for everyone. I'm sorry I got so emotional." There was a pause. "Oh well, I'm glad you're seeing reason, Alina. I'd love to see the cafe progress. Maybe I could stop by sometime." Another pause, longer this time. "Sure, yeah, that would be fine." Over the next 3 weeks I played the perfect grateful mother-in-law. I smiled during dinners. I asked about renovation choices. I even praised Leora's business instincts when she showed me the menu designs. Inside, I was documenting everything, every conversation. Every offhand comment about how the cafe was our dream and our investment. I was building something, though I didn't quite know what yet. Then I remembered the original investment, $480,000. I'd transferred it directly to their business account. Leora had handled all the paperwork, told me it was a gift, a family investment in their future. But had I actually signed anything saying it was a gift? I went through my files, every folder and envelope. Finally, I found it, the document I'd signed when I transferred the money. I read it carefully, my heart starting to pound. It wasn't labeled as a gift. It's labeled as a family investment loan. There was a line for interest rate left blank, a line for repayment terms also blank. At the time, Leora had said, "Oh, those are just standard fields, don't worry about them. We're family, we'll figure out the details later." I'd signed it without filling those sections in because she'd assured me it was just a formality. Now I looked at that document with completely different eyes. I called Delphine again. "The cafe money, I have the original agreement. It's not a gift, it's structured as a loan." I heard papers rustling. "Bring it in now." In her office, she examined the document thoroughly. "This is interesting. Without specified terms, it defaults to certain legal standards. There's an implied interest rate, and without a stated repayment schedule, it could be argued that the loan is callable on demand. Meaning you could potentially demand repayment, and if they can't pay, you'd have a claim on the business assets." My mind was spinning. "Can we tie this to the fraud case?" Delphine thought for a moment. "Potentially, if we prove the house and asset transfer was fraudulent, obtained through coercion. And we established that this investment was a loan, not a gift. We could argue that they engaged in a pattern of financial exploitation. It strengthens everything. So what's next? Now I think we're ready to file. We'll start with a fraud review and flag the trust trigger. That will freeze any assets connected to you, including potentially their access to the cafe accounts if we can prove the loan connection. But Alina, once we do this, there's no going back. Are you sure?" I thought about Caleb's silence, about Leora's smile when she said I'd outlived my use, about sitting alone in a house that legally wasn't mine anymore, I'm sure. The next day, Delphine filed everything: a fraud investigation, a challenge to the transfer, a formal demand for loan repayment with penalty interest for the unfilled terms, and she sent copies of everything to Caleb and Leora's attorney. But I couldn't resist one more move, one last twist of the knife. I knew the grand opening was in 2 days. I called Leora. Honey, I'd love to come to the grand opening, show my support. Oh, Mom, that's so sweet, she said, and I could hear the triumph in her voice. She thought she'd broken me, thought I'd accepted my place. Yes, please come, it'll mean a lot to Caleb. I showed up early on opening day. The cafe was beautiful, I had to admit. Exposed brick walls, hanging plants, a glossy espresso machine that probably cost $15,000. My money had paid for all of it. Leora was fluttering around in a new dress, directing staff, laughing with early arrivals. Caleb looked stressed, checking his phone constantly. I walked up to them, smiling. This is wonderful, I said loudly so nearby guests could hear. Leora, congratulations on becoming the new legal owner of all my assets. I'm so proud of how you've built this dream. Her smile faltered for just a second. Mom, that's not really how I'd phrase it. Oh, but it's true, isn't it? Just a few weeks ago you told me I'd outlived my use, and now here you are, using everything I gave you to build this beautiful place. Her face went pale. Caleb grabbed my arm. Mom, what are you doing? Just being honest, sweetheart. Isn't honesty important in family? People were starting to stare. Leora recovered quickly, laughing nervously. Elena's had a hard few months. Surgery, you know. Sometimes the pain medication affects her memory. My memory's fine, I said clearly. I remember everything. That's when 2 people entered the cafe. Delphine Arquette in her crisp navy suit, and a man I didn't recognize, tall with graying hair and an official-looking badge on his belt. The room's energy shifted immediately. Delphine walked straight to Leora, her heels clicking with purpose. Mrs. Vance, I'm attorney Delphine Arquette representing Elena Harrow. This is financial crimes investigator Victor Dane. She held out a folder. This is a notice of fraudulent asset transfer under elder coercion laws, and a formal demand for immediate loan repayment of $480,000 plus accrued interest. The cafe went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on those expensive hardwood floors my money bought. Leora's laugh sounded strangled. This is insane. She signed everything willingly. Our attorney approved everything. Yes, Delphine said calmly. She signed while sedated after major surgery, which legally invalidates the document under laws protecting vulnerable adults from exploitation. That's not, we didn't. She understood what she was signing, Leora stammered. Victor Dane stepped forward. Mrs. Vance, we have evidence suggesting a pattern of financial exploitation. This includes recorded conversations indicating coercive intent. Recorded? She recorded us. That's illegal. Leora's voice was rising now. Single-party consent state, Delphine said. Perfectly legal. Would you like to hear it? She looked at me. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steadier now than they'd been in weeks. I pressed play. Leora's voice filled the cafe through my phone's speaker, tinny but clear. You've outlived your use. We can't build a future dragging dead weight. And legally, Elena, everything's ours now. The silence after was deafening. I watched Caleb's face drain of all color. He looked like he might be sick. That's out of context, Leora said desperately. She's twisting everything. Mom, tell them you're confused, that you didn't understand what was happening. I met her eyes. I understand perfectly. You manipulated me while I was vulnerable, took everything I had, and then told me I was worthless to you now that you'd gotten what you wanted. Tears were running down my face, but my voice didn't shake. Some of the cafe guests were leaving, whispering to each other. Others stood frozen, watching. Delphine continued in that calm, professional voice. The trust protection clause Mrs. Harrow established prior to the surgery has now been triggered. All funds connected to Mrs. Harrow, including the original investment in this establishment, are frozen pending investigation. You can't do that, Leora said. This is our business, our dream. Built with money obtained through a loan that's now in default, Delphine replied. Additionally, the investigation will review whether the business assets themselves are subject to seizure as restitution. Caleb finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, please don't do this. I looked at my son. You stood there and said nothing while she told me I'd outlived my use. You didn't defend me, you didn't stop her, you just looked away. I'm sorry, he said, and now he was crying too. I'm so sorry, I was weak, I should have protected you. Yes, I said simply, you should have. But I wasn't done yet. This was the moment I'd been building toward, and my need for revenge overrode every other instinct. I pulled out one more document from my purse, the last piece I'd been holding back. There's something else, I said, looking at Delphine. The investment loan document. I'd like to formally present the original. Delphine took it, examined it again, though she'd already reviewed it thoroughly. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Harrow, this document establishes the $480,000 investment as a loan, signed by both of you as borrowers. No, Leora said, shaking her head. No, that was a gift. She gave it to us. She said it was for family. The document says otherwise, Delphine continued. and since no repayment terms were specified, it defaults to standard legal terms including an interest rate and immediate callability upon default. The fraud investigation constitutes default, Victor Dane added, which means Mrs. Harrow now has a legal claim on all business assets purchased with those funds. Essentially, until the loan is repaid in full, she has primary claim on this establishment. I watched understanding dawn on Leora's face. You planned this, she whispered. From the beginning, you planned this whole thing. No, I said, and I meant it. I prepared for the possibility that the people I trusted most might betray me. I hoped I was wrong, I prayed I was wrong, but I wasn't. The cafe's grand opening was over. Guests filed out in uncomfortable silence. Staff members stood around uncertainly. Leora collapsed into one of the expensive chairs my money had bought. You've destroyed everything, she said. We put everything into this. Our savings, our time, our future. You've destroyed it all. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant. But looking at her sitting there, at Caleb standing with his head in his hands, I felt something more complicated, something dark and bitter. I didn't destroy it, I said quietly. You did, the moment you decided I was worth less than money. Victor Dane was explaining something to Caleb about the investigation process, about how they'd need to provide records, about potential criminal charges. Delphine approached me. We should go, she said gently. Let them process this. The legal proceedings will take time. As we walked out, I heard Leora behind me. How could you do this to your own family? I turned back one last time. You told me I outlived my use, that I was dead weight. You took everything from me and then told me to be grateful. So don't talk to me about family, Leora. You broke that bond, not me. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Delphine filed motions. Victor Dane's investigation uncovered more than I'd expected. Leora had convinced 2 other elderly relatives to invest in the cafe, using similar high-pressure tactics. It was a pattern. The house and asset transfer were officially ruled invalid. Everything reverted to my name. The cafe funds remained frozen while the loan repayment case proceeded. Without access to operating capital, the cafe closed within 2 weeks of opening. All those dreams, those glossy plans, collapsed like a house of cards. Caleb called me once during this time. Mom, please, Leora made mistakes, but she's my wife. Can't we work something out? Where were you when she was manipulating me? I asked. Where were you when she told me I'd outlived my use? I know, I failed you, I was a coward, but please, you're destroying our lives. Your lives or your wife's schemes. He didn't have an answer for that. The loan case went to mediation. Leora's attorney argued that the investment was clearly intended as a gift despite the document's language. Delphine presented the recording, the fraud investigation findings, the pattern of exploitation. The mediator ruled in my favor. Caleb and Leora owed me $480,000 plus interest and legal fees, totaling over $530,000. They couldn't pay, of course. They'd sunk everything into the cafe, so the business assets were seized and auctioned. I bought the cafe myself at auction, significantly below its build-out value. Some might say that was my revenge finally complete, but it felt hollow. I hired a new manager, someone with actual experience who I had no emotional connection to. Within 6 months, the cafe was thriving under proper management. It turned out the location was excellent, the concept was sound, just the execution had been rushed and the operators were in over their heads. I sat there sometimes, in the early morning before opening, looking at the empty chairs and thinking about how we'd arrived at this point. Caleb and Leora divorced 8 months later. He discovered she'd been having an affair with their cafe build-out contractor, that much of the money had gone to overpriced renovations that lined her boyfriend's pockets. He called me when the divorce was finalized. You were right about her, he said. About everything. I'm so sorry, Mom, I was blind. Being sorry doesn't fix what happened, I replied. My anger had cooled into something harder, something permanent. I know, but I'm asking anyway. Could we maybe try to rebuild? I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Here's the truth I couldn't escape. My stubbornness, the same trait that let me ignore warning signs about Leora, now made it almost impossible to forgive Caleb. My need to be right, to have my pain validated, created a wall between us I wasn't sure I wanted to climb over. I don't know, I told him honestly. You're my son, I love you, but you stood there and watched while she destroyed me. You chose her over me when it mattered. How do I forget that? You don't, he said quietly, but maybe eventually you can forgive it. We met for coffee a few weeks later. Not at my cafe, neutral ground. He looked thinner, older. I've been in therapy, he said, trying to understand how I let things get so bad, how I became someone who could treat you that way. And what has therapy told you? That I was always conflict avoidant. That I let Leora make decisions because it was easier than pushing back, that I valued peace over principles. He looked at me with red eyes, that I'm weak, basically, that when you needed me to be strong, I failed. I wanted to disagree with him, to comfort him the way I had his whole life, but I couldn't. Yes, I said instead. You did fail me. He flinched like I'd hit him. I want to make it right, but I don't know how. I can't pay you back the money. I can't undo what happened. What do? I don't know either, I admitted. Maybe there isn't a way to make it right. Maybe some things can't be fixed. We sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, he spoke again. The cafe looks beautiful. I drove by yesterday. I saw the line out the door. It's doing well, I said neutrally. That's good. I'm glad something good came out of all this mess. More months passed. The cafe continued to thrive. I'd made back most of my investment plus profit. Financially, I'd won completely. Legally, I'd won. But sitting alone in my house, the one I legally owned again, I felt the cost of victory. I'd lost my son. Not literally, he still called every few weeks, still invited me to coffee that I sometimes accepted and sometimes declined. But the relationship we'd had was gone. That easy trust, that unconditional love, it had died the night he stayed silent while Leora told me I'd outlived my use. My stubbornness wouldn't let me forget. My pride wouldn't let me move past it. Sometimes I wondered if my need for revenge, my decision to let them invest everything before pulling the rug out, had been worth it. Delphine had warned me that revenge isn't the same as justice. She'd been right. Justice would have been stopping them immediately, protecting myself and moving on. Revenge was watching them invest everything, watching them celebrate their grand opening, and then destroying it all in the most public, humiliating way possible. I'd chosen revenge, and it had satisfied something dark in me, but it had also made reconciliation almost impossible. How do you forgive your son when you've literally taken everything from him? When you've publicly humiliated his wife, destroyed their business, and caused their divorce? Even though they deserved it, even though I was the victim, the scale of the revenge created its own barrier. A year after everything fell apart, I got a letter from Leora. It was short. Elena, I won't apologize because we both know it wouldn't mean anything, but I want you to know I understand now what I did to you. Losing everything, being betrayed by someone you trusted, it's taught me something I couldn't learn any other way. You were right to destroy me. I deserved it. I hope it was worth it. I read that letter a dozen times. The question burned in my mind. Was it worth it? I had my house back. I had my money back plus profit from the cafe. I had my pride. I'd proven I wasn't a helpless old woman to be manipulated and discarded. But I ate dinner alone every night. Holidays were quiet. When I had another health scare last month, a minor one thankfully, I had no one to call who would rush to the hospital. I'd won the war but lost something I could never recover. My family. Caleb tried harder than I gave him credit for. He sent cards on my birthday. He called every Sunday evening, even when I kept the conversations brief and cold. He showed up at the cafe sometimes, not coming in, just standing outside looking at what his mother had taken from him. One Sunday he called and his voice was different. Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm moving, got a job offer in Seattle. Fresh start. Something twisted in my chest. That's far. Yeah. I think I need distance from all this, from the memories. I see. Silence. Then, I'm not asking for forgiveness anymore. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that despite everything, I love you. I'll always love you, and I'm sorry. Even if you never believe it, I'm sorry. After he hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. This was it. This was the final consequence of my revenge. My son was leaving, maybe forever. I'd achieved total victory and absolute loss simultaneously. The cafe continued to succeed. I donated most of the profits to elder abuse prevention organizations. It felt right somehow, using the money that had caused so much pain to help others avoid the same fate. People in the neighborhood knew my story now. Some saw me as a hero, someone who'd stood up to exploitation. Others whispered that I'd been cruel, that I'd taken revenge too far. Both were probably true. Last week, I was sitting in the cafe early morning when a young woman came in. She looked nervous. Mrs. Harrow, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, sit down. She twisted her hands together. I saw an article about you, about what happened with your family. I think my grandmother's going through something similar. Her son and his wife are pressuring her to sign over her house and she's so confused, I don't know what to do. I gave her Delphine's card. Call this attorney, today. Don't wait, she left grateful and I felt something shift slightly. Maybe this was the point. Maybe the revenge had been wrong, but the outcome, the awareness it raised, the people it helped, maybe that justified some of it. Or maybe I was just trying to make myself feel better about choices I couldn't undo. The truth is messy and complicated. Leora was wrong to manipulate me, wrong to exploit my vulnerability, wrong to say I'd outlived my use. Caleb was wrong to enable her to stay silent, to choose peace over protecting his mother. But I was wrong too. Wrong to let my need for revenge override my attorney's advice. Wrong to twist the knife with that public confrontation. Wrong to make Caleb pay the same price as Leora when his sins were different, born of weakness rather than malice. In the end, I've realized something about revenge that no one tells you. It's not satisfying the way you imagine it will be, in your mind. You picture the moment of victory, seeing your enemies brought low, vindicated and triumphant. And I got that moment. I got to watch Leora's face crumble, got to reclaim everything she'd stolen, got to prove I wasn't the helpless old woman she thought I was. But what they don't tell you is what comes after. The empty house, the silent phone, the knowledge that you burned bridges that maybe, possibly might have been repaired with less fire. The cafe makes good coffee now. People come in every morning, chatting and laughing, unaware that they're sitting in the ruins of a family. Sometimes I think about selling it, removing this constant reminder. but my stubborn streak won't let me. I built this success from their betrayal. Giving it up would feel like admitting I was wrong. So I keep coming in, keep sitting in the corner watching strangers enjoy a space bought with my pain. Caleb moved to Seattle 2 months ago. He sent a postcard with his new address. No message, just the address. An invitation to stay in touch if I want. I keep it on my refrigerator. Some days I think about calling him. About telling him I understand he was caught between two impossible positions, that fear and weakness aren't the same as malice. Other days I remember his silence, that moment when he could have defended me and chose not to, and the anger resurfaces fresh as ever. My biggest flaw, the one that allowed all this to happen, was my desperate need to be needed and my stubborn refusal to see what I didn't want to see. But those same flaws made my revenge possible and complete. They gave me the patience to wait, to plan, to strike at the perfect moment. I destroyed them thoroughly because my stubbornness wouldn't let me stop halfway. So was it worth it? I don't know. I got justice, definitely. I protected myself and recovered my assets. I potentially helped others by raising awareness, but I also ensured that reconciliation with my only child became almost impossible. I chose revenge over forgiveness, and that choice has defined my life since. The unexpected twist: I'm not sorry. People expect me to express regret, to wish I'd handled things differently, to mourn the relationship with Caleb, but mostly I feel a cold satisfaction. They tried to destroy me and I survived. More than survived, I won. That has to mean something. Even if what it means is that I'm not the person I thought I was, that I'm capable of calculating cruelty, that I can choose revenge over family, that under the right circumstances I can be just as ruthless as the people who hurt me. Sometimes the person you become in the fight is someone you don't entirely recognize. And maybe that's the real cost of revenge, not the relationships you lose, but the person you discover you can be when pushed far enough. I'm Alina Harrow. I'm 73 years old. I own a successful cafe built on betrayal and revenge. My son lives 2 states away and we barely speak. And given the chance to do it all differently, I honestly don't know if I would. That uncertainty might be the most honest thing I can admit. Welcome to the real aftermath of revenge.